Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Can you? Okay. Thank you for having me. It's an honor to speak before this historic task force. My name is Jessica Ann Mitchell Iwuyor. I'm a descendant of Africans that were enslaved in Georgia and South Carolina. The oldest known ancestor on my maternal side is John Hamilton, born in 1853, and his wife Delaney, born in 1857, both designated as mulattoes in the 1880 U.S. Census and Black in later census records. Their granddaughter Flossie Hamilton is my maternal great-grandmother. When she married my great-grandfather George Wilder, slavery had been abolished. However, like many other African Americans living in the South, Flossie and George were not allowed to live freely due to the oppressive system of sharecropping that made many Black families indebted and criminalized for seeking to leave. So they fled in the middle of the night with their children to Augusta, Georgia, where most of my maternal family resides today. I bring up their story because it highlights two significant factors of importance concerning community of eligibility, lineage, and harms. For reparative justice, both lineage and harms should be considered with special prioritization towards harm-based reparations. Concerning lineage and special consideration to direct descendants. Lineage is important to reparations discourse because our lineage was subjected to ongoing terror and systemic oppression. However, the concept of lineage should not be limited to the system of chattel slavery. This limited description minimizes and erases the historical, ethnic, and cultural identities of our ancestors and ourselves, which is essential for understanding and identifying the harmed communities. African Americans are a mixture of descendants of various African ethnic groups. Over time, these shared experiences, cultural fusion, and combined progeny, African Americans became an ethnic group through the process of ethnogenesis. And we are part of a larger ethnic identity consisting of the greater African diaspora with other Africans that endured the transatlantic slave trade and merged identities in the Western world also through ethnogenesis. These expansive ethnic identities, though more recently affirmed and identified, emerged before the formation of the United States and continued forming following the construction of the United States as various African ethnic groups continued combining and creating communities during and after the transatlantic slave trade. This expansive ethnic categorization is often referred to as African descendants, Afro descendants, and or people of African descent, institutionalized and officially recognized by the United Nations. The Durban Declaration Program of Action, adopted at the 2001 World Conference Against Racism, Racial Discrimination, Xenophobia, and Related Intolerance, also has an ongoing working group of experts on people of African descent. Understanding people of African descent as a special category and African Americans as an ethnic group among this category of transatlantic slave trade survivors is a critical factor in better understanding lineage and how to navigate potential issues concerning race-based and race-neutral legislation. Concerning the community of eligibility, Black immigrants and Black American migrants, reparations should be implemented through a streamlined, non-invasive approach that gives as many African Americans the opportunity to receive remedies as possible. Strict mechanisms of approval that would force families to take DNA tests or endure extensive genealogical background searches should be avoided. This would be an invasive, time-consuming, and costly strategy that potentially excludes families that refuse to submit DNA or refuse genealogical background searches. Furthermore, the assertion that everyone can or will trace this ancestry independently does not account for accessibility and or disability issues. Many who disagree with limiting eligibility to the enslavement era do not disagree in order to dilute or harm African American justice claims, but to protect it. Specifically, in the case of Black Californians, much attention has been given to the question of Black immigrants, and not enough attention has been given to the descendants of Black American migrants from Southern states. The majority of Black immigrants arrived in California within the last 50 to 30 years and are therefore easily distinguishable regarding qualifications for reparations for chattel slavery if California were to take a tiered harms-based approach. On the other hand, Black American Californians face their own uphill battle concerning limiting eligibility to chattel slavery. Many Black Americans in California are in fact not descendants of persons enslaved within the state of California. Instead, many are descendants of persons enslaved in southern states, such as Texas, Georgia, Arkansas, Louisiana, etc. Their families later migrated to California during the Great Migration from 1910 to 1970, especially during and following World War II. Supposed eligibility was limited only to the enslavement era. In that case, the state of California could likely decide only to provide reparations for Black Californians that can provide proof of descendancy from persons enslaved within the state. This would be the next logical step and not a far-fetched scenario. And in this case, many African-American Californians would not qualify for reparations in California. However, by recognizing reparations as inclusive of the era of enslavement, the U.S. apartheid system, and ongoing systemic racism, African-American Californians would be safely protected and covered under reparations initiatives and eligibility claims. Concerning harms. In 1951, the Civil Rights Congress published We Charge Genocide, the historic petition to the United Nations for relief from a crime of the United States against the Negro people, asserting that the United States violated the UN Genocide Convention. Current-day reparations advocates like Nkechi Taifa have also declared that the harms endured by people of African descent in the United States fit the definition of genocide according to the International Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide. Taifa even coined the term institutional genocide as a framework through which to analyze the evolving jurisprudence of international human rights doctrine to selected conditions impacting Black people in the United States. The World Conference Against Racism additionally declared slavery and the slave trade crimes against humanity. The harms that our ancestors experienced and their descendants experience are more than about lost wages or the racial wealth gap. They are about our civil and human rights. They are about the vestiges of the historic government-sanctioned violence against people of African descent and the systemic oppression that after slavery also made us victims of mass incarceration and prevented us from access to housing, healthcare, education, and banking. Thus, to fully close the door on the horrific chapter in history, reparations should not be limited to the era of enslavement or eligibility, but should not be limited to proof of lineage during the period of eligibility for harms against people of African descent. It must also include U.S. apartheid system and the ongoing systemic racism. The eligibility for harms against people of African descent in the United States was ongoing and very inclusive. Thus, the remedies must be ongoing and inclusive, or we risk extending the injuries instead of repairing them. Thank you.